Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to lecture 28 of International Marketing subject. In our previous lectures, we had identified 6 categories of modes of entry into international markets. The first one, and perhaps the simplest one and the quickest one, is through exporting. The firms and the manufacturers produce products in their home countries, and those products are then exported, transported through air or by land or over sea through ships to other markets and sold there without much of modifications. Now, exporting has been really growing over time and has been preferred mode of entry because of its simplicity and its short time requirement for firms to enter foreign markets. It's also the least risky way of entering foreign markets because not much of investment is required upfront. At the same time, not much of modification into products or production processes are needed in many cases for exporting products and services to foreign markets. Exports also brings in higher value addition, also brings in the capabilities and skills which are superior, and hence firms of any country which are actively engaged in exports are able to produce better quality products. Only then they are able to compete in international markets. That requires sophisticated processes, sophisticated management practices, and as a result, the firms are more sophisticated, and firms can sell to larger world markets and also have an opportunity to grow in terms of their scale economies and scope economies. The countries which are actively exporting and the firms which are actively exporting in such countries are able to offer better jobs, more specialized jobs, are able to create higher value addition, and hence the firms prosper, the employees of the firms prosper, and the nations prosper because the firms are able to bring in better value addition, better profits, and of course hard currencies from foreign exchange from foreign markets. For this reason, every country, including developed and industrialized countries as well as developing countries, are very keenly interested in promoting exports from their countries to the rest of the countries in the world. The theories which we had discussed earlier on in this course, which explain success in international trade, also identify that factors like country similarity help firms from one country to export into other countries. When foreign countries have similar distribution system, similarity of market, then it is an environment which helps home country firms to export products and services to such foreign countries which are offering similar infrastructure, similar market environments. At the same time, there are other theories which also help us explain this phenomena of success in trade in international markets. Porter forwarded his research findings that 4 factors are needed in any country for its firms to succeed in exports and in selling in international markets. These were 4 factors that really need to be present in any home country market. These factors of production need to be there. If for any business, labor is an important factor of production, it's labor intensive industry, so countries where abundance of labor is there will have advantage in such industries. At the same time, technology, finance, materials, raw materials, and other factors of production, whichever are critically needed for any type of industry or a firm, if abundance of those factors are present, they will help a firm from that country to succeed in international markets. At the same time, large, sophisticated domestic markets are required because initially the firms will expand their scale economies, their scope economies, they will learn, they will establish their brands, they will learn to manage large brands, they will learn to compete in markets, they will build up their capital and other resources from their domestic markets. Once the firms are sufficiently experienced, once the firms are sufficiently large, then they are in a better position to compete in international markets. So a prerequisite for firms to succeed in exports is that the domestic market for that type of industry should be large as well as sophisticated enough by world standards. That is the sort of environment which helps firms to groom, to develop, and become competitive in their industries in world markets. At the same time, no one firm can really master all aspects of a business, all aspects of a technology, so related and supporting industries are needed. We had given examples of auto industry and other industries. In case of auto industry, one car requires tens of thousands of firms to come together from their own technologies and working background to converge and to assist in developing one product, that's an automobile. So a whole lot of related and supporting industries are needed for auto industry to succeed in any one country. So there's the third factor which is very important, that the countries which are successful in exporting have related and supporting industry pertaining to that particular industry in their home countries. Since firms are the agent of business, the firm which conduct business is the firm which add values, so strong firms are needed in addition to the earlier discussed three factors. So the fourth factor which Porter had identified are successful firms, the firms which invest in their strategic competitiveness, in their strategic planning, in their strategy formulation, and in their capacity building. So when the firms are strong, when the firms are capable, when the firms are professional, then these firms are able to compete in international markets. So four factors are required in any one country for firms of that country to gain the level of competitiveness and advantages that can help them compete in international markets. So countries are really using these theories, these concepts to develop their competitiveness, develop their environments, and develop their firms to compete in export markets around the world. The second important mode of entry into international market, which we discussed, was through licensing. Licensing in the last few decades has emerged as a preferred mode of entry into foreign markets because of shortening product life cycles, because of increasing cost of developing technology, because universities are coming into research and universities don't want to often indulge themselves directly into business. So the technologies they develop, the know-how they develop, then they license it out to commercial firms to produce final products and services which can be sold into world markets. Franchising is a form of licensing. In franchising, the licensor or the franchisor is more actively involved in the business of licensee or franchising. So in franchising, not only the trade name, patent, or technology or other aspects of intellectual property have been rented through contract, but at the same time, the licensor or franchisor also actively supports and helps and gets involved into the way the business is done by the franchisee. So franchisee not only uses the intellectual property, but also uses at the same time the standardized format of selling products and services into markets. So franchising again has emerged as a preferred mode in many businesses for expansion into international markets. If you look around us in our own country, we can see increasing number of franchisees from foreign countries coming and really expanding successfully into our markets. At the same time, franchising also provides us and our firms the opportunity to expand in international markets, because there are a lot of advantages in franchising way of expanding international markets. The franchisee bring in their own expertise of foreign markets. They bring in their own capabilities, their own motivation. They also bring in their own funds and financing and share risk. So these are the factors which help a business to expand rapidly in world markets. If a firm just depends on its own capabilities, just depends on its own resources and funds to expand, then that will be a constrained process. It will be a slow process for a firm to expand into world markets, because the expansion will require funds. Expansion will require large organizations. And in certain businesses like retailing, it's very difficult for a firm to quickly expand and open too many retail stores around the world, because managing retail operations is a complex operation. It requires dealing with cash, dealing with customers. It requires recruiting a large number of sales staff who are really not that highly paid. At the same time, it will also be a situation they are not highly motivated because their pays are less, their education are less. But that is what is needed in retail business, and hence more difficult to control large retail business, large chain of retail outlets. So franchising has emerged the most preferred way of expanding into retail business in world markets because the franchises bring in their own management, their own expertise in order to manage the franchised retail operations. Then counter trade has been the early way of trading across nations. In earliest times, when there were no currencies, there were not so sophisticated developed exchange mediums, then goods were traded for goods. Goods were exchanged with other goods. So traders will take goods from their own country, travel to a foreign land, sell their goods, and acquire other goods in lieu for those earlier goods and bring them back to their home country. And such was the trade. Simplest form of such trade is a barter trade, that one party brings its goods and other party also brings in goods, and they exchange these goods of value with each other. More recently again, counter trade has emerged as a preferred mode of entry into many foreign markets. Presently, 20% of world trade is through counter trade, and especially in emerging markets, markets where the countries do not have so much of foreign exchange that is needed in order to support import and export of a rapidly growing economies. So countries prefer trading through counter trade, and perhaps a viable way to enter those markets quickly is through counter trade, and hence again is a resurgence, a re-emergence of counter trade, and that's where we are seeing now almost 20% of the world trade is through counter trade. Then we also discussed some specialized mode of entry like turnkey projects, turnkey plus projects. These are the type of projects or way of entering into foreign markets, for especially utilized in complex large industrial projects or infrastructural projects. An example of turnkey project in our country has been the motorway. Many of the refineries and petrochemical complexes that are constructed through the world as well as in our country are through turnkey projects. That the foreign firms, they construct the project, they undertake all aspects of constructing the project, and a final ready to operate project at the turn of the key is handed over to the buyer. In case of turnkey plus project, the firms which are supplier firms not only undertake to construct these complexes, these infrastructures, these factories, but they also at the same time undertake to bring in financing, do the surveys or feasibility studies or other services that are required with relevance to those projects. So such projects are called turnkey plus projects. Then we moved on to discuss a very important way of entering into foreign markets through foreign direct investment. Now, foreign direct investment, a very, very important way of entering into foreign markets is because the foreign direct investment not only bring in foreign currencies, foreign equipment, foreign technologies, but they are also bringing in foreign management expertise. Foreign direct investment is different from other ways of entering foreign markets in a way that the firm which is entering into foreign markets is not only investing, not only sending its products and services to sell in foreign markets, it's also bringing in its managerial expertise and know-how and institutional knowledge. In today's time, that is something of very high level of value for a country which is a recipient of foreign direct investment. So all countries are very keen to attract foreign direct investment, not just developing countries, also industrialized countries. So we are seeing that more of foreign direct investment is going into developed and industrialized countries like United States. United States, the larger recipient of foreign direct investment. China's emerging industries and growth and phenomenal economic growth has been a result primarily of foreign direct investment, because through foreign direct investment, not only the countries attract technologies, funds, they also attract needed management expertise. As we had been discussing earlier, that for success in creating products and services that countries and firms can sell into international markets, not only materials are required, factors of production are required, not only labor are required, trained professionals are required, not only related and supporting industries are required, but essentially management expertise is also required. It is the firm which converts inputs into outputs. It is the firm which brings in various skills and converts into platforms. And it are these successful platforms which converts inputs through capabilities into meaningful products and services. We can see around us many firms with a lot of capabilities, but not good in creating products and services that can be effectively sold in world markets. Because they were not able to translate those capabilities into proper platforms. Using those platforms, they were not able to convert inputs into viable products and services which can be sold at profit, at value in markets. So management expertise is a very, very essential element. And management expertise also brings in institutional knowledge. Well, a firm can buy, or a country can buy resources, materials, inputs. It can buy raw materials. It can buy technology. But what is more difficult to buy and untraded is the management expertise and institutional knowledge. Foreign direct investment is the only mode of entry into foreign markets which not only brings in other aspects that are required to produce successful products and services, it also brings in the needed institutional knowledge and management expertise. That's why if a country has an industry which is very successful by international standards, that the firms in that industry from that country are exporting successfully to world markets, then invariably that industry is also attracting healthy foreign direct investments from firms and other countries. Even in case of United States or Western countries which are very advanced, their export-oriented industries are sustaining their competitiveness in world markets because they are open to foreign direct investment, and there is an active foreign direct investment into those industries. And this is an aspect which is even more needed in case of developing countries, because developing countries are weak in management skills, in professional skills, in technologies, and in other aspects of competitiveness and strategic advantage. So foreign direct investment is treated as a critical component of trade, and hence in countries' balance of payment statistics, a special statistics are maintained for every country for foreign direct investment. And it is tracked on yearly basis that which country is attracting what type of foreign direct investment into what type of industries. And that is an indicator that if a industry of a country is attracting healthy foreign direct investment, then it clearly identifies that this industry of this particular country in future is going to remain very competitive in international markets. Because today it is receiving healthy foreign direct investment from such firms, from such countries which are very capable and which are very advanced in that type of industry. So these were the modes of entries which we had discussed in detail in our last lectures. Now, the option is very wide for a firm or for a country to choose to enter into foreign markets. And a very careful decision has to be made as to which mode of entry should a firm use to enter into foreign markets. As we have just discussed, a firm has a wide choice. A firm can enter a foreign market through exports. It can also choose to enter a foreign market through licensing, or through franchising, or even through counter trade, or via any of the specialized mode of entry, or a firm may choose to invest as a direct investment into foreign markets. So all these options are available to firms to enter into international markets. So there's a big question now. Which mode of entry would be most suitable for a firm to enter into foreign markets? There are a host of factors which can be used as a criteria to determine and identify which of the various types of modes of entry is more suitable for a firm. The first such factor is the nature of business. A preferred mode of entry would critically depend on the nature of business itself. As we have been discussing, if the nature of business is retailing, if a firm is in retailing and intends to expand into international markets, and its retailing operation consists of small to medium-sized retail outlets, maybe of apparel, or maybe of packaged goods, or any other item for consumers to buy. And we can see around us many such examples in case of fast food, or cosmetics retailing, or apparel retailing, or fashion merchandise, or sports goods retailing. So we see such formats being expanding into international markets. Now, such firms need to open many small outlets if they need to expand into various markets, an aspect which is very difficult to manage. And hence, in this type of business, a more suitable way to expand into international markets is through franchising. Provided, as we had discussed in our discussion of franchising, that the franchisor in developing the concept is able to provide a value on an ongoing basis, because the franchisees around the world are required to pay fees and profits to the franchisor on an ongoing basis. So the franchisor must also be able to provide that value on an ongoing basis. So what are the type of values that are needed? One, of course, is a strong brand name. That the brand name should be so strong that it should have a strong capacity to attract customers and attract customers to spend. Good brands, successful brands, strongly attract buyers who are willing to spend money. As we see some strong brands in fast foods, some strong brands in fashion merchandising and retail, some strong brands in grocery retailing as well. Now these are the brands which have a strong recognition worldwide. And once these brands are used to open outlets in foreign countries, then customers in those countries are willing to come to such outlets and make purchase. So strong brand is a value from franchisor on ongoing basis for the franchisor. At the same time, it can be technological support, training support, and support in form of materials. Needed materials or merchandise that is to be sold on those retail outlets. So the value on an ongoing basis means if the franchisee ever decides to discontinue with the contract and relationship, then can expect to lose substantial business and profitability advantage. So it is that business and profitability advantage is the value which is binding the franchisee to continue with the franchise agreement. If at any one point in time franchisee feels that the franchisor's brand is not strong enough, or franchisor's products are not good enough, then the franchisee may feel that it is not so viable, it's not so useful, it's not so profitable to continue with this franchise or to continue to pay rent and royalty and profit share to franchisor. And hence the franchisee may think or may decide to discontinue such a relationship. So for businesses which are retail businesses, where the franchisor has a strong brand and is able to provide strong value to franchisee in other countries on an ongoing basis, then franchising can emerge as a preferred way of expanding into international markets. But if a firm is a research firm, a small to mid-sized research firm, which is developing various technologies, maybe in agriculture sector, in biotechnology, in pharmaceutical field, or in IT field, or in electronics, or in materials, or in any area. If a firm is just a research firm and its business is to develop new technologies, this firm is not in a business of producing and selling final products. Hence, a viable way for this type of firm to expand into international market is through licensing. That is the way the firm can rapidly expand into international markets, especially when there is huge amount of money needed for research. In order to recover that huge amount of money, a firm needs to sell to wider world customers through licensing. So this is a type of business for which naturally licensing seems to be a preferred way of expanding into international markets. Similarly, if a firm is manufacturing very standardized products, maybe undergarments or white shirts, which are called classics. Now these are type of products which have little variation, or these are type of products which are not so much culturally sensitive. Means standard products are sold worldwide. Then it's viable for such firm to locate in a country where there are low production costs. Like in Pakistan, there are low production costs in hosiery manufacturing, low production cost in cotton weaving and cotton fabric production and woven garments manufacturing. So it is viable for firms in such product lines, being in countries like Pakistan, to expand into world market through exporting. Similarly, we have seen that producers of standard grain like rice, wheat are the type of firms for which the preferred mode of expansion into world market is through exporting, because they are exporting very standard products, basic type of agriculture produce. So not much of variation is needed or customization is needed for world markets. And most of the selling of such products is through commission agents or brokers. And hence, not much need to expand into international markets directly. Exports is the preferred way of selling to world markets. Pakistan has a very strong and major cotton yarn manufacturing industry. Now, cotton yarn is a very standardized product and mostly sold in domestic market and world market through agents who then broker sales through commission and other such profit objectives. Hence, we see most of the firms which are involved in spinning activity are selling to world markets through exporting. So, nature of business is an important factor which identifies a preferred mode of entry into foreign markets. The second such factor is the size of company. It's easy for a very large firm to expand into international markets. Not only that large firms have resources, capabilities, but they also have management know-how and they have professional managers, because expanding into international markets and at the same time simultaneously operating into many world markets required a sophisticated, large management organization. So large firms find it easier to expand into international market compared to smaller firms, because smaller firms lack the critical mass of an organization that is needed to manage a multinational operations. Many small firms may also not be managerially so sophisticated. They may also not have among their staff professional managers who are needed to expand into more sophisticated world markets. Hence, size of the firm is another factor which is important in determining which mode of entry is perhaps suitable for a firm to expand in international markets. The third factor which prevails on the choice of modes for expanding international markets is the resource availability. That how much resources are available to firms. Firms which are located into rich countries, into more affluent countries, have access to larger pool of money, larger pool of funds which are needed to expand into international markets. For expanding into international markets, firms need to invest into marketing their products and services, and if they want to get engaged into direct investments, then resources are required, funds are required. So access to resources and availability of resources is an important factor which determines which way of expanding into international markets is a preferred way. If firms do not have access to suitable amount of funds, then perhaps they have to be contented with only exporting, because foreign direct investment may require resources to invest into foreign markets. Exporting may not need that much amount of money and that much amount of resources. So very often from countries that are not so rich, countries that are developing, we see that more of the activity in engaging into international markets is through exporting. The reason is that the firms do not have access to resources, in addition to, of course, may not be sophisticated enough to expand into international markets. So when we see that the countries are rich, firms have access to resources, there is a lot of support from the governments in shape of funds and etc., then firms find it easier to commit themselves more strongly to world markets. The fourth factor which really affects the choice of mode of entry into international markets is the strategy of the firm itself. That what has been and what is the strategy of the firm. Because organization of the firm and strategy that firm has adopted are interrelated. And scholars from all walks of life very strongly emphasize that structure of organization is very strongly related to the chosen strategy of the firm. So it really depends on the strategy of the firm that which mode of entry is a more suitable mode of entry for that firm into international markets. If firm has strong divisional structures, then the firm may find it more easy to create more divisions which are needed to expand into international markets. Because as firm is expanding into international markets, perhaps it may be creating a divisional structure within the organization to take care of foreign markets. If firm is not organized like that, then it may find it more difficult to expand into distant international markets. So organizational strategy, organizational structure are other factors which also prevail upon the choice of preferred mode of entry into international markets. The next important factor which affects the choice of entry into foreign markets is the need for control. What is the need for firm to have a control over its businesses? Some firms in their businesses use proprietary technologies and they want to control those technologies. In many cases, we see such situations. For example, in packaging industry, we consume packaged milk, we consume packaged juice, and it is a huge industry worldwide. And there is one dominant firm or two dominant firms in the world markets. These firms are dominant because the technology involved in packaging is very sophisticated and proprietary. And these firms do not expand into world markets through franchising or licensing. Because if they choose franchising or licensing as a mode to expand into international markets, then they have to train the licensees and franchisees on the technology itself, because it will be licensees and franchisees who will be selling and using those technologies in foreign markets. And hence the important aspects, proprietary aspects of technology have to be passed on to the franchisees and licensees. If a firm that owns the technology licenses the technology out and passes the proprietary information of that technology, then reduces its control over technology also, because somebody else, a franchisee or a licensee in another world market, also has the know-how and knowledge of that technology, and hence can become future competitors, can misuse that technology. So in this case, the firms have preferred to expand into world markets through their own subsidiary operations, so that the control of the technology remains within the organization, that nobody, no other firms have a know-how of that proprietary technology. And hence, a control over that proprietary technology also ensures the firm to establish a dominant position in that industry, because nobody else knows that technology. If somebody else knows that technology, can become a competitor. Similarly, many firms want to have a control over the way their brands are managed. In many cases, the firms are very, very successful because they have strong brands. Many technology firms are successful because they have strong brands. Many consumer goods firms are successful because they have strong brands and umbrella brands. Many fashion merchandise retailers and sellers are successful worldwide because they have strong brands. So brand and brand building requires a very sophisticated and controlled effort. And if a firm chooses to expand international markets through distributors and through franchisees or through licensees, then aspects of control over the brand, management of the brand in those foreign markets may be passed on to licensees and franchisees and distributors. And many firms do that. But then such firms then also lose control over the way their brands are positioned and marketed in foreign markets, and hence can adversely affect the brand's position, the brand's equity in world markets. So there are a number of firms which prefer to have their own total control over their brand and brand's positioning and marketing and advertising in all world markets, so that they control their brand and they manage and they position their brand correctly and strongly in world markets. So control over brands, control over technologies, and control over other aspects of business is another factor which really affects the choice of the preferred mode of entry into international markets, because various mode of entries allows various level of controls. Exporting, there is very little control that an exporter has in foreign markets over its brand, over its technology. Similarly, licensing and franchising often requires the licensees and franchisees to be trained into the aspects of technology, and hence the proprietary aspects of technology may be passed on to the licensees or franchises. And at the same time, if the world market is being engaged through distributors, through licensees, through franchises, then the firm may also lose control over its brand and its management. So control over brand, control over technology, control over businesses also very strongly drives the choice of preferred mode of entry into foreign markets. Another aspect which is important in choice of the preferred mode of entry is ownership advantages. If a firm has certain competitive advantages that can help that firm to easily succeed in any foreign markets. Like we see there are some global brands in technology products, in computer industry we see successful global brands, in fast food industry we see successful global brands, in fashion apparel we see successful global brands. Now these are the type of global brands which are sought after in countries around the world. If these brands are expanding, they will not find it difficult to expand into international markets, because They are strong global brands. They are strong because they represent strong firms. They are strong because they represent strong technologies. They are strong because they represent strong management and other aspects of the organization. So when firms have such advantages, or maybe patents, certain pharmaceutical firms, certain chemical firms, certain technology firms have very important technology patents that no other firm can really use that type of technology or formulation or processes or even brands. Then patents and copyrights of strong technologies, of strong processes, of strong brands, which can drive a lot of business, also helps firm to easily expand into international markets. So the firms which have such ownership advantages, often we see such firms not using exports or not using licensing or franchising to expand into international market. They prefer to enter international market more through direct investments, because direct investment is less risky for them. So there are many brands, when they enter markets, they can easily start to sell because they are so famous. So less risk for them to engage into that type of investment compared to other brands or firms which are not so well recognized, not so well reputed. They don't have such ownership advantages. The next factor which is important in choice of mode of entry is location advantage. In certain industries, in many industries, there's a lot of advantage in being closer to customers. For example, in fashion apparel industry, because fashion is a very local phenomenon and has psychological obsolescence, and hence necessary for firm to be closer to customers. Okay, customers know the firm more closely. At the same time, firm is able to interact and know the customers more closely. If a firm is in medical services, then perhaps it is beneficial for the firm to be closer to the customers, closer to its patients who are the customers of the firm. At the same time, there are certain industries which use bulky raw materials, for example, cement industry, or industries involved into fish processing or agriculture product processing. Now, these type of industries have to be closer to the sources of raw material, because maybe perishable raw material does not allow raw materials, the farm products or the fish, to be transported large distances before it is processed and packed. So processing industry, or in fishing industry and in agriculture products industry, needs to be closer to the sources of raw materials. So depending on such necessity, then a firm may be constrained to choose a mode of entry that brings that firm and its operation and processing closer to its markets or its sources of raw materials. The next important factor which helps firm choose the right mode of entry is the internationalization advantage. That the firm has advantage in controlling its business itself rather than depending on other firms. Like in many cases we had discussed that the firms have good brands. Now in that case, a brand is a strong factor which attracts future business for that firm. The firm may not want to depend on other firms to manage its brands through distribution agreements or through franchise agreements or through licensing agreements, because brand is so much more important for this firm for its future success. Now in this case, the firm may want to have a control over its brand and hence want to expand into international market through direct investment rather than any passive way of expanding into international markets and letting other firms manage its brands or technologies and other crucial aspects of business. As a rule of thumb, I may suggest that for any firm, if a certain aspect is an essential core competence that is needed for this firm to differentiate itself from its competitor, then it may not be viable for this firm to let other firms manage the aspects of this core capability. If a brand or a technology or a management practice or any know-how or any skill is essentially a critical competitive advantage that a firm has, that differentiates this particular firm from its competitors. The firm must manage itself, must control itself, this aspect of strategic competence, strategic advantage. If it lets others do it, or if it outsources this aspect, then I would consider such firm to become a hollow firm. That the outsider firm now control a very critical aspect of success in an industry, and hence can always become a strong future competitors. So, for firms, in order to have a control over their critical success factors, they perhaps might need to choose a suitable mode of entry into international markets, which allows them to preserve and keep their control over such strategic aspects of their businesses. The next factor, which is also important for firms to choose the right mode of entry, is the foreign market's size and growth. If foreign market is large in potential and is expected to grow rapidly, then perhaps firm may choose to get more involved, more directly involved into those markets. But if the markets are small, or markets don't expect to grow in future substantially, then perhaps it may not be that much viable for a firm to commit much of resources, fresh resources, new resources in exploring such foreign markets which do not have an opportunity of growth in future. Risk is another factor which really affects the choice of mode of entry. As we have been discussing, that exports is the least risky way of entering foreign markets because it requires least changes in products, least investments into entering foreign markets. Whereas foreign direct investments or opening a subsidiary operations into foreign countries may require a lot of resources, a lot of capital, and hence a higher level of risk. So what is the type of risk a firm is willing to take is also going to determine its choice of entering into foreign markets. Some modes of entry are more risky than other modes of entry into foreign markets. Government regulations also affect the choice of mode of entry. If the tariffs are high, if governments are discouraging imports, then foreign firms may have to invest into such a country in order to avoid such barriers of exporting into a country which has high import tariffs and import restrictions. So government regulations also affect the choice of preferred mode of entry. Competitive environment has emerged as a very strong factor in choice of preferred mode of entry. Now we are seeing that the global firms, international firms, have to move into world markets in order to counter competitions. Not because their markets are large enough, not because there were other profit objectives or other objectives, but because if they don't do it, then the competition will become stronger. So the firms have no choice but to expand into international markets. In our countries, in 60s, 70s, 80s, we could see that our country, consumers in our country were consuming many electronic products, many brands of televisions, automobiles, but we could not see these firms directly involved into our markets. But as South Koreans and firms from other countries started to expand into world markets, especially into developing countries, and started to become stronger competitors of Western firms, Japanese firms and American firms, then Japanese and American and Western firms had no choice but to commit themselves directly into developing countries more and more. So in the last 2 decades, as a result, we are seeing now the Japanese firms, the Western firms, the American firms, which initially were selling into our markets through exports, are now more directly involved into our markets. Because if they don't do it, then their competing firms will do that and become a stronger global competitor. So competition is driving firms into getting more directly involved into foreign markets. The local infrastructure of a foreign market again is as an important factor, as we have also discussed in country similarity theory, is that firms prefer to get engaged, prefer to sell to such markets which have more similar infrastructure than their home countries. So as the infrastructures around the world, the selling infrastructure, the communication infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, the logistics infrastructure are being developed, are being improved, encourages foreign investors to get more directly involved, because it's so much easy to do business in a country which has efficient logistics, efficient transportation, efficient telecommunication, and such infrastructures. So the countries where we see such structures being extensive, being efficient, we are also seeing that foreign firms are more involved into direct investment into such markets. So all these factors together drive the choice of a firm for a preferred mode of entry into foreign markets. Now, as far as foreign markets are concerned, they can be categorized into 4 different types of categories. Some countries are platform countries like Dubai or Singapore. These are type of countries that are small, but they have very important position and they have very efficient infrastructure, telecommunication, transportation infrastructure, logistics infrastructure in the regions. And the regions around them have strong economic growth in the last few decades. And hence, these tiny nations have become very important platform market that many foreign multinationals around the world are establishing their offices in Dubai, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. Not because Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong are their prime market, because by locating there, they can then engage into information seeking of the region. And it's more efficient to locate in the central places like Dubai and Singapore in order to engage in the wider Middle East region or Southeast Asian region. Then the second category of countries is emerging countries like Vietnam, Philippines, even Pakistan, where the economies are growing. Now, these are the type of countries where the markets have now started to expand, hence advantage for firms to get more directly involved into such markets. So as we are seeing the situation now in our country, we are seeing foreign banking firms, financial institutions, we are seeing consumer goods firms, technology firms, automakers, all getting more directly involved in our market, because our market is now and offers a strong emerging economy. Then the third category of market are growth markets, which we are seeing in case of China, rapidly growing markets. Now these are type of markets where firms have to establish their footholds early. Those firms which are not able to establish their foothold, are not able to get directly involved, it will become more difficult to do that at a later stage. As market becomes more sophisticated, more competitive, and the firms which have entered such market early have established themselves more strongly. And hence, the firms have to enter now when it's early growth stage, because if they opt to enter later, it may become more difficult. Then the fourth type of market which we see in most industrialized countries in West, in Japan, in America, are established, mature, sophisticated markets. So world markets can be categorized into these 4 type of countries. So depending on the nature of market, the firm can choose the preferred mode of entry. If it's a platform country, then firm may opt to open an office there in order to gather information. But if it is an emerging market, the firm may open a representative office to get to know more about the market. Market still not in a growth stage. It is an emerging market, so it may help a firm to be present there through a representative office to get to know the market, to start to get involved into the market. But if the market has moved in a growth stage, like we are seeing in case of the Chinese market, then it is viable for firm to establish a local subsidiary earlier on, because later will become more difficult. In case of mature markets and more sophisticated markets, selling through exports or through any other mode of entry, which is least involving, may not be very helpful, because the sophisticated markets require sophisticated way of selling products. So products are sold often accompanied by sophisticated services. So that requires firms to get really more engaged. But then opening a new operation through greenfield strategy may not be viable, because markets are already very advanced, very competitive. So often we see firms enter such markets through acquisitions. So that can be a preferred way of entering into foreign markets. One aspect which is very important, which I would want to discuss towards the end, is the critical threshold. That while a firm chooses to enter a foreign market, must also ensure that its involvement into foreign market is substantial enough. If it is less than substantial, then all investment may not bear enough result. There is a certain level of involvement which is needed, beyond which a firm becomes a serious competitor in an industry. For example, in case of consumer goods, if a firm just sells few products half-heartedly, then the consumers in the market may not be that aware of the brand of the firm, and hence the marketing and other aspects and other efforts of the firm may not bring in so much fruit. But if a firm needs to get involved, it has to be present with a certain level of force, certain level of activity, which I can call as a critical mass or a threshold, for it to get a suitable recognition and suitable competitive position in the market. So any mode of entry which is less than the required threshold will not be an effective mode of entry into foreign markets. The firms really need to understand what is that critical mass or threshold which is needed to create an impact in a market, because that impact is needed, and hence the firm must choose an appropriate mode of entry to achieve that impact level. Thank you for being with us today. Allah Hafiz. अस्सलाम वालेकुम व्यूअर्स, वेलकम टू लेक्चर 35 ऑन इंटरनेशनल मार्केटिंग सब्जेक्ट। आज के हमारे लेक्चर का मौजू होगा इंटरनेशनल मार्केट सेगमेंटेशन। आपको याद होगा कि हमने प्रीवियस लेक्चर्स में डिस्कस किया कि जो मार्केट्स हैं, खा वो कंज्यूमर मार्केट्स हों, खा वो बिजनेस मार्केट्स हों, वो बहुत एस्पेक्ट से वेरी करती हैं। कंज्यूमर मार्केट्स की मिसाल हम ले लें तो कंज्यूमर जो है वो वेरी करते हैं अपने इनकम के हवाले से, कंज्यूमर वेरी करते हैं अपने एज के हवाले से, कंज्यूमर्स के जो बिहेवियर्स हैं, जो रहन सहन है, जो कंजम्पशन है, वो भी वेरी करती है अपने कल्चर के हवाले से। जैसे जैसे कल्चर चेंज होते हैं, कंजम्पशन में भी उसका असर होता है। जैसे अगर हम पाकिस्तानी हैं, पाकिस्तान में रहते हैं, तो हम लोकल कल्चर के हवाले से जो हम कपड़े पहनते हैं, खाने पीने की चीजें इस्तेमाल करते हैं, किस किस्म के हमारे घर बनते हैं, दे आर यूनिक टू आवर कल्चर। इस तरह जो दूसरे कल्चर्स को लोग बिलोंग करते हैं, उनकी बैकग्राउंड के हवाले से बहुत सारी कंजम्पशन के जो उनके पैटर्न्स हैं, जो प्रोडक्ट सर्विसेज इस तरीके से कंज्यूम करते हैं और जिस किस्म के बेनिफिट्स वो प्रोडक्ट्स एंड सर्विसेज से हासिल करते हैं, दे आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन द यूनिक एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ कल्चर। इसी तरीके के साथ और बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स हैं जो कि कंज्यूमर्स के परचेज बिहेवियर को अफेक्ट करते हैं, जिसमें उनके सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, साइकोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, लाइफस्टाइल के एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, साइज ऑफ हाउस होल्ड है, वेदर दे लिविंग रूरल एरियाज और अर्बन एरियाज, और इसी तरीके के साथ जो लोगों के बिहेवियर्स हैं उनमें भी फर्क आता है इन टर्म्स ऑफ देयर परसेप्शंस, देयर लॉयल्टी टुवर्ड्स ब्रांड्स, देयर परचेज ओकेजन्स एंड many other aspects of behavior also vary from consumer to consumer. और इसी तरीके से बिजनेस मार्केट्स भी वेरी करती हैं, कहीं बड़ी फर्म होती है, कहीं छोटी फर्म होती है, और बड़ी और छोटी फर्म का जो साइज है वो इम्पैक्ट करता है कि वो किस किस्म के प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज किस तरीके से वो खरीदते हैं, तो उनके परचेज डिसीजंस, परचेज पैटर्न्स, परचेज पॉलिसीज बदल जाती हैं। फिर इसी तरीके से ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की लोकेशन के हिसाब से वेयर दे आर लोकेटेड, ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के बिहेवियर, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जो परचेज पैटर्न है, प्रोडक्ट सर्विसेज वो चेंज होते हैं। और हमने अपने कल्चर के लेक्चर में डिस्कस किया था कि जैसे जैसे कल्चर चेंज होता है उससे लोगों के बिहेवियर भी चेंज होते हैं, उनकी बिजनेस प्रैक्टिसेस भी चेंज होती हैं, क्योंकि बिजनेसेस जो हैं बहरहाल वो लोग ही तो हैं। पीपल ओन बिजनेसेस, पीपल मैनेज बिजनेसेस, एंड बिजनेसेस बाय फ्रॉम पीपल, सेल टू पीपल। अगर लोगों के अपने बिहेवियर में चेंज आएगी किसी कल्चर की वजह से या किसी और वजह से, इनकम की वजह से, अब लोकेशन की वजह से, रिलीजन की वजह से, सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स की वजह से, अगर लोगों के बिहेवियर में चेंज आएगी तो वही लोग तो बिजनेसेस चलाते हैं या बिजनेसेस के साथ इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, सो बिजनेस प्रैक्टिसेस में भी चेंजेस आएंगे। तो ये वेरिएशंस जो हैं ये बहुत ज्यादा हैं, और क्योंकि जो बायर्स हैं कंज्यूमर मार्केट में तो उनकी तादाद बहुत ज्यादा होती है, और इंटरनेशनल मार्केट्स में जाएं तो भी बायर्स की तादाद बहुत बढ़ जाती है, क्योंकि बायर्स अब दुनिया के कई ममालिक में एग्जिस्ट करते हैं। तो ये जो वेरिएशंस हैं ये रिक्वायर करती हैं कि जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है वो अपनी डिलीवरी के प्रोसेस को, प्रोडक्ट को और कम्युनिकेशन को चेंज करें इन ऑर्डर टू सूट इट टू द चेंज रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ अ बायर, क्योंकि बायर्स तो पसंद करेंगे कि चीज उनके मुताबिक